TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes.
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my tickets!
Everybody loves Hippo Toes.
Scary dog!
Dancing at Blurnsville.
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting Premier Podcast TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is Foundation on Apple Plus TV, brought to you by the good people at Phantom 4 and Skydance Television. Foundation is an American science fiction streaming show created by David S. Goyer. Yes, that David S. Goyer. You know, the guy that does the DC movies that everyone hates. And Josh Friedman. And it's based on the Foundation series of stories by science fiction writer extraordinaire Isaac Asimov. You know him from the iRobot stuff. It features an ensemble cast led by Jared Harris and Lee Pace. It debuted on September 24th, 2021. And it's already been renewed for a second season. It chronicles the 1,000-year saga of the Foundation, a band of exiles who discover that the only way to save the Galactic Empire, not that Galactic Empire, this is a whole other Galactic Empire, from
the original,
from the destruction is to defy it. All right, and joining me, yet another science fiction extravaganza here is David Wright. How do you do, sir?
I'm doing good, thanks. Enjoying the holiday season. Though based on that plot summary, it's pretty obvious that no one working on the show has any understanding of the original book.
Did you read? So my understanding actually was that these were published as short stories in like a magazine. So how
and they were.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they were later compiled together into a book, and then a series sort of grew from there.
Okay, so how much of the source material have you read or are you familiar with?
Back in junior high school, I read through the first book, and I started into the second, but then kind of fell off there, and I still haven't gone back to finish off the series.
Having watched the series now and read the books, how much of the first book is in this first season here?
I'd say about the first 10 chapters.
Okay, so not even the whole book, just part of it.
No, yeah, just part.
Okay. Just in general, how do you think they did as far as an adaptation? Do you think they got the spirit and tone of the book, or is this yet another one of these, well, they tried?
Yeah, it's definitely in the well, they tried category.
Tell me about the book then. What makes the book so dramatically different from what they attempted here to do with the show? Okay,
well, probably the biggest thing is there's no genetic dynasty in the book.
Oh, God, are you serious?
I am serious.
Like the whole thing here.
Exactly. Like I was watching this with my wife, and I think I spent like 80% of our viewing time just looking at her going, this isn't in the book.
Did she start playing the drinking game with you every time you said she could drink?
No, well, that would have been funny, but yeah, it's that a lot has been changed, and they added a ton of filler to the story that I thought was sort of unnecessary.
Okay,
but because like in the original book, the idea is like the first episode is fairly close to the book. Like they added some things, like the whole Sky Bridge destruction and existence thing, and introducing the genetic dynasty. But it starts off the same. Like Harry Seldon is put on trial on Trantor for saying the Empire is going to fall in within 5 centuries. You know, they think he's trying to bring about the end of the Empire, and he says, no, it's going to fall. It's like mathematically certain. My goal is to reduce the Dark Age following the collapse of the Empire to as little as possible by getting a bunch of nerds together and writing an encyclopedia on the ass end of the universe.
So was Isaac Asimov purposely trying to take the collapse of Rome and make it into a science fiction story?
Possibly, but I guess
basically what happened.
Yeah, though that's such a small part of the book. Like we don't even really see the Empire collapse. It's more done off screen. It's like once they're done with the trial, then they move to Terminus, the Foundation's planet, and pretty much from then on, it's from Terminus's perspective.
Okay, so
the Foundation.
So the series deals with the, Harry Seldon, who is played by, I just had his name,
Jared Harris. Great casting, by the way.
Yeah, no, excellent casting. Look, the performances and the costume design and some of the cinematography is really top notch in the show.
Oh, Apple. They
spent money on this.
Yes, and it shows. Unfortunately, not in the script.
No, that is definitely something we need to talk about. And for those of you who've heard our TV parties before, this is going to be yet another one of these where we talk for an hour. I look at the clock and go, "We're done now." We're not going episode by episode because my brain will start to ooze out of my head. But one of the things that the show deals with basically is, Harry goes before the Emperor and says, "Look, there's no stopping this. The damage has been done. The decisions have been made. At this point, we're just here to wait. I'm telling you, the train is coming.
There's too much momentum.
Right. Yeah. All we can do is make sure we have a library, essentially, with all of our knowledge, so that after it does happen, we don't forget how electricity works.
Pretty much.
Which again is kind of what happened in the other part of the world after the Roman Empire. If you're ever into reading about that, is that basically like they burned the libraries and destroyed the roads and everything was disconnected, and 100 years of darkness, or that. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but I read this in a whole other science book. I think the Dark Age, like there was almost another ice age during that period. The Earth has gotten so cold.
Yeah, but it was, I think many of the Islamic countries actually held on to a lot of the Roman knowledge and actually kept it until the Renaissance. And
we had this whole balance where the rest of the world was kind of weathering through, but Europe was a cave. People barely able to get fire going. In any case, I exaggerate, but that's essentially what Harry is saying, and they're like, maybe you need to go. And so they kick him off the terminus. There's this whole thing with him and his adept, his person that I can't remember what her name is, but
Gail Dornick.
She solved the math problem, and she like supports what he's saying, and they're like, yeah, both of you, off you go. And then it's somewhat chronicling their journey to Terminus. Then we kind of shift over to what's happening on Terminus and that whole thing. And as you can see in the graphic I put up, there's this like spire that's hanging out that produces this field where anyone that tries to approach it collapses, and no one knows why, except for this one character who it doesn't seem to affect. She's somewhat connected to it, and there's a big mystery box there. The rest of the show, and the reason why I'm talking about this, the rest of the show deals with Lee Pace, who is basically the Emperor, like on a political mission around the galaxy to try to head this off at the pass. There's a whole like subplot where he goes to this one planet where someone is ascending to some sort of like political religious leadership, and he wants one person and not the other, and the other person is basically like, what the half the problem here is, and this goes to what Harry is saying as well. Half the problem is your clone dynasty. The fact that there hasn't been change for like a millennia now. You just keep cloning the same person over and over again. And that is 90% of why this whole empire is going to collapse, except that cloning of this one person is the foundation of this empire. So when you say to me, and this is why I went through all of that, when you say to me like, yeah, none of that's in the book, I don't understand why they invented it then. What in the book is the main reason the empire is collapsing, and why do you think they went in this whole other direction out of whole cloth?
Yeah, well, in the book, it's more just bloated bureaucracy and corrupt aristocracy. The usual suspects that. Okay. The empire's it's getting old. Sort of too decadent, right? Ambitions fading, and it's starting to crumble as empires want to do as part of their cycle. Right. The whole premise of the Foundation is that we have this this concept of psychohistory, this sort of merging of history, economics, and math, like statistics that can basically predict in broad strokes.
It's predictive analysis. It's not that far off from reality.
Yeah. But this is really, really, really good. It can't go down to the individual level, but it can predict sort of the broad histories is like a best way I could think of explaining it is like it couldn't tell you that on such and such a date, such and such a time, Archduke Franz Ferdinand would be assassinated on a street corner by Gavrilo Princip. What it could say is, well, we'll have increased tensions between states in Europe, increased technological buildup of arms, secret alliances, and it's only going to be a matter of time. Yeah, right. And it's only going to be a matter of time before someone does something stupid, and there's a big war. And then out of that war, one country will be blamed for it, creating a lot of resentment, and a strong man would arise from that under a fascistic system. But like, it couldn't tell you, such a man would be Adolf Hitler, and like it can't be a vegan
and a painter,
and kill millions of people. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so that's sort of the idea of psychohistory, and but it's not just that Harry Seldon predicts the fall of the Empire; it's that he engineers the origins of the Foundation to lay the foundation for like the next galactic empire. Like it's not just to build an encyclopedia; it is to become the next empire and shorten the Dark Age. But and in this incarnation, they sort of have him almost trying to accelerate the death of the Empire. Whereas in the original, he's like, no, like I have no desire to accelerate the end of the Empire. He views the Empire as a good thing. This isn't an evil empire like in Star Wars. In fact, earlier on in the book, he says, like, even if the Empire was evil, it would still be better than the coming Dark Age.
Okay.
So
it's weird. Like, I can see in the development of this some sort of agenda-driven machinations. We want to talk about certain things in the show. We want this there. Having heard you say that and kind of reflecting back on the show, there definitely seems to be some like internal anger inherent in the subtext about like the state of this country. Well, you're not this country, you're Canada. The state of the United States, and just this feeling of like the smart people should go form their own country, which is not an uncommon thought. That's go on Twitter for an hour and a half and go find like the left side of Twitter, and you'll find the people who I think even like before the pandemic, there was like, how about the people, the anti-Trump people form their own country? Like, well, I think there was a graphic that was floating around for a while that it was like, like the top U and part of Canada was all one country, and then like the Midwest and the South was its own country, and it was like Biblevania or something.
Yeah. Didn't they try that in Seattle?
They definitely created like no police zones and stuff. It did not work out very well, from what I understand. In any case, my point being, like, there is definitely this undercurrent in this show of the people in charge are dumb. The people in charge are fat and lazy, and they refuse to listen to reason, and they have let this whole thing fall into muck and mire. And so the smart people should just go off and start again somewhere else without them. And it's like, okay, I mean, sure. Here's my thing with that, and we can get into talking about specific characters. Day, who is the emperor. There are three emperors. There is Dusk, Day, and Dawn. Dawn is the youngest. Day is like the middle-aged person, and then Dusk is the elder statesman. Again, they're all the clone of the same guy. But the one running the day-to-day operations of the Empire is Day, who's played by Lee Pace. And I never got the impression that Lee Pace was a bad dude, and that I never really got a sense of how the Empire got to be in the state that it was in. Like, when we talk about evil empires and stuff, so just to do a comparison and contrast, like the Empire in Star Wars, problem with it was a military dictatorship. Non-humanoid aliens were made into slaves. They were building warships. You get into some of the extended universe stuff, there's like tax issues, and it's just, people can feel the weight of the Galactic Empire upon them. George Lucas never did a great job of explaining any of that, but it's all out there in bits and pieces. So you as an audience member understand why the rebels are fighting this. Not the least of which is they're fighting against slavery and whatnot.
Yeah, their ships look like giant knives, and their soldiers all wear skull helmets. It's pretty obvious who's the good guy, who's the bad guy in this situation. He uses a lot of coding in Star Wars to kind of give you the idea that these are basically space Nazis.
Right. I never, and I don't want to get your impressions of this, I never got a real good sense of what's wrong with this empire that everyone feels the need to rebel against. What did they do wrong? Like what is the right?
It's not that sort of situation. I think one of the problems is like the concept of the Galactic Empire was kind of one of the things Foundation came up with. Like that was sort of Asimov's invention, and that inspired George Lucas with the idea of the Empire in Star Wars. And of course, Star Wars is a huge pop culture phenomenon. So, like, I think now we're just attuned to, you know, whenever you hear Galactic Empire, you assume it must be some sort of evil fascist dictatorship, as opposed to just a really big government.
Well, I think also, it's funny you bring that up, because I think also there is a concerted effort now to kind of look at what's popular and with the understanding of these were inspired by something else. And so now we have this endless ability to distribute content. Let's put all the inspired by something else out there. You know, let's put all the inspiration out there. And so if Foundation was at least one of the inspirations for Star Wars, there's an impetus to make something of that and put it out for people to watch. But again, I go back to the show doesn't do a great job of explaining to the viewer, at least not that I could see, what other than a general, well, that's just the nature of life, things rise and fall. What all else, you know, what made this empire so bad? And more to the point and more to the character, I don't know why everyone has such a big issue other than he's a clone with Lee Pace's character. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, again, the Empire was in the books is not depicted as being something evil. It's just bloated and ineffective and collapsing. And that is the problem. Like, you know, Harry Seldon says, like, you know, I don't want the Empire to collapse. I'm not happy that psychohistory says it will collapse, but, you know, the math is solid. It will collapse. And I'm trying to do something to minimize the damage from that.
But in the show, they keep insisting that, like, you know, the Empire made egregious errors that are no longer able to be corrected. All it can do is crash and burn and start over again.
Yeah, again, I think they're just trying to sort of jazz it up. You know, like we need the light show, we need the explosion, we need the fire and the tears and the drama.
I think you said it before. Like one of the first things that happens in episode 1 is a giant terrorism attack where they blow up this ridiculous space bridge, and that becomes the impetus for. I have the graphic up as my background tonight, where there's a retaliatory attack where they just nuke a planet.
Pretty much. Yeah, and again, I think that's more just to do like big action, and also to try and interweave stories together. Like we have the attack on the Anacreons, and then we have the Anacreons attacking the Foundation to get revenge for it. Like in the books, it's just they're the closest like small fiefdom to the Foundation, and they just take it over. They just say, you know, the Empire's collapsed. They said, yeah, sure, you guys can take care of Terminus. So here we are. You work for us now. Suck it. We have warships. You know, and but in the book, the fascinating thing is like the Foundation, whilst being conquered, it's like, you know, we're the ones who actually know how to fix all your stuff because we've been writing this encyclopedia. So like they get all these old Imperial warships, and the Foundation has to fix and maintain them. And then Salvor Hardin, who's the mayor of Terminus at the time, not like some warden with psychic powers, he says, well, you know, he kind of takes the Arthur C. Clarke approach of, you know, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So he basically turns the Foundation's like technicians into priests, where, you know, we do the sacred rituals that make the lights turn on and everything go. And when it gets to the point where like the Anacreons and the Foundation have a disagreement, he says, okay, fine, just turns everything off, says you have blasphemed against the gods, and the population revolts and the Foundation takes over.
That sounds
which is way more interesting than what happens in the show.
Yeah, beat me to it. Like, sounds like a much more interesting story than anything I got here.
Yeah, and then it's at that point that the vault opens. In the books, the vault is just like a giant glass cube about the size of a small room that has like a 3D recording of Harry Seldon saying, oh, you know, by now you've probably been taken over by Anacreons, but by creating a false religion around technology, you have been able to control them. And then he gives the whole, you know, pulls the rug out from under them and says, you know, the purpose of the Foundation was never to write the encyclopedia. It was to become this next galactic empire. And then, and in the show, you have like, you know, Salvor Hardin's mother, like, you know, he lied to us. There was no point in us doing the encyclopedia. It was just busy work. It's like, no, the encyclopedia was the first most important step. And in the book, since most of these are like smart, educated people, they go like, oh, we get it. So now we have to work to use this psychohistory plan to build the next empire. But again, this is, people have to be emotional and drama instead of, rational adults who understand the situation they are in and the best way out of it.
So anything about Lee Pace's character?
Yeah, I guess, now's a good time to talk about, like, for all my complaints about what they've done to the Foundation and sort of put it on the back burner, I have to confess the concept of the genetic dynasty I find really interesting. Like, it's a neat idea.
I think it definitely comes from, I think, a great truth about humanity, where it's like we found one, like if somebody could have figured out how to clone Barack Obama, they would have. And we would have the Obama dynasty currently in the United States. Yeah. I wonder how that would rate with this. Yeah, it's like Nixon's head in Futurama, right? Well, it says no presidential body, and I don't have the same body anymore. Right. So you get robot head Nixon as president. The show definitely has a bent against conservative philosophy. And I don't mean that, like, necessarily the political philosophy. I'm not talking about, like, it has a stand on abortion. Yeah, conservatism as in keep things the same. Let's not innovate, not try anything new. That broad conservatism. Yeah, there is an argument that's made that the genetic dynasty is we have this Cleon character. He worked. He was great. We just keep cloning versions of him. And as long as we can continue to do that, there's no reason to change. And Harry Seldon's argument is basically, no, this is exactly what the problem is. Yeah, Cleon the First was the right guy at the right time, but the times have changed, and we need new blood. We need a fresh perspective on things and a different character to deal with the newer issues. It does. I like the philosophical examination of the idea of, like, cloning. It's like, and you just kind of said it, like, well, we have this guy. He was perfect. He was the right guy at the right time. So the presumption is, and this is a very sort of like elementary presumption, is like, well, if we just keep cloning him, it'll always work. As if time doesn't change people, or things, or the circumstances of time, don't change how that person would respond to certain things. And so what the show deals with in very broad strokes is this, we have three age different clones. And one of them is, like, freaking out that he's, like, genetically different. Like, he's got some deformities. He's colorblind. He talks about, like, his hands don't. He's like left-handed. Yeah, he's like left-handed instead of right-handed. And it's like, and if anyone could find out that I am imperfect and different from my brothers, I'll just die and they'll replace me. Which ultimately ends up what happens with him. And you get the sense that Day at his age didn't behave that way. He didn't get easily led by some girl in the garden, which is what happens today. Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting because like the Day at the start, he's a different than the Day in the middle of the series or towards the end of the series. Like the original, like the Day at the start, he's kind of a jerk. Like he nukes an entire planet because a couple of people bombed a space bridge. Right. Even when you get to the end of the show when he's Brother Dusk, he's still kind of a jerk about everything. And that's one of the problems with the show. I don't know if you were on the last Witcher show, but one of the complaints I had was you never knew when time was shifting. Like, a title card never comes up to tell you in The Witcher, this is a flashback, this is a flash forward. Yeah. Now we're in the present. This 10 years have gone by, 5 years have gone by. This is 20 minutes later. None of that. So there are things happening in The Witcher where I'm like, I have no clue where we are. And it took me the entire series to figure out that there had been such a time shift that when you meet Dusk in the beginning of the show and Day, a couple episodes later, they've moved on, and now the former Day is now Dusk, and the prior Dawn is. And so everyone's moved on; they're different people now. And you're right. It's a great way of keeping the same cast throughout, like, different eras in the show. Well, I want to talk about this really quickly before I forget. I'd hate to go through this whole show and not bring this up. Again, Lee Pace, for the majority of the show, is made to seem like somebody who is genuinely interested in there's a presumption in the writing that he wants to keep power. All people in power want to stay in power. You know, they're rare as the George Washingtons of the world who willingly give up absolute power. You know, he is doing what he needs to do to maintain the genetic dynasty, to maintain power, to prove Harry Seldon wrong, that they can keep this train on the track and not go into the ditch. But well, there's an arrogance about him that Lee Pace does very well. And if you don't know who Lee Pace is, if you don't or forgotten, he's like the elf lord in The Hobbit, and he's great in that role. And there's a lot of that going on here with him here.
I think it was Ronan the Accuser.
I kept Ronan the Accuser. I kept waiting for him to like tilt his head and see his dragon scars. But there is an air about him of him genuinely, and this comes up when he goes to the one planet where he has to walk the salt road, for however long that was. And you know, he takes off his shield, he takes off his clothes, and he's doing this to prove a point to the people there. He wants them to keep the faith and be, and be behind him. And so he's making kind of like a sacrifice. He's showing that he's made of sterner stuff. And it's a great series of episodes, and I think it's some great character work for Lee Pace. If you're supposed to be rooting against him, though, it utterly fails there. I'm not really sure what we're
Well, I think when you get to the
or here,
I think when you get to the end, you find out that he lied about what happened in the cave, like his holy vision, to sort of manipulate events towards, and then that kind of makes him look a bit bad because he's he's using deception. But yeah, like what he is doing is he's trying to keep the empire together. He's trying to keep the ship going. Yeah, he is not, nothing that he does is out of any sort of malevolence or ill intent. He's just trying to do his job, keep the empire going, keep it in one piece. And
go ahead.
The emperors are not really bad people. They're all trying to do what they think is best. Even at the start when they attack the planet, it's to make an example, to reassure people of the supremacy of the empire. It's just it comes back to bite them in the next generation.
Right.
So I don't mind that. Like really what I think is like, and you can really tell that they've spent a lot of time thinking about how the genetic dynasty works, all the rituals, all the little details, what happens if there is a defective clone, that kind of stuff. And it's good stuff, and I just kind of wish it was its own show.
Yeah. We've talked about this with other adaptations before, where I think this was brought up with Dune, and I've read about it again with regards to Foundation with some of the criticisms. Like a lot of science fiction is deemed unfilmable. Like it's just too dense a material. It's too
cerebral. There's like with Dune, like so much of the story is inside the characters' heads, which is difficult to do in live action. They tried to take the life of my son.
And so with Foundation, I think that was one of the struggles in development was how do we take this thing which is unwieldy and try to turn it into something somebody might actually want to watch. And that's the other problem here is that everyone now equates with science fiction with dog fights in space, and boy, is that not this show.
There's very little action in Foundation. Like shooting things. Well, in fact, it's like they had the quote from Isaac Asimov. Like violence is the last refuge of the incompetent, or something like that. And at the end of the episode, they solve their problem by shooting someone in the neck with an arrow. Like it was like, again, you see the book, and the solution to the problem was, well, we need to outthink our opponent and use our advantages to counter their advantages. And in the end, they ended up with a non-violent solution to the problem. That was so more interesting than what they actually did, because we need to have kung fu fights on a spaceship.
Right. I marvel that a movie like The Martian was ever made. Because that was pure science fiction. He solves his problems using science.
Yeah, it's more like Apollo 13.
Right. Where here this is more science philosophy than it is science fiction.
Yeah, like the what gets you interested in Foundation is how is the Foundation going to solve the Seldon crisis?
Right.
Like what things has Harry Seldon planted at the beginning of the Foundation that will enable them to solve this problem that seems impossible to solve? And like a spoiler for what happens later in the books is the Foundation starts to become full of itself. It's like, we've got psychohistory on our side. Any problem, we have a predestined solution to it. And then one time, like, because sort of every anniversary of the Foundation, the vault opens and the recording of Selden will say, oh, this is where you're at now, and this is how you solved your problem. But one time he comes on and he gives a completely different set of circumstances, and they're like, oh crap, like, did we mess up? Yeah. But then you have but then there's the other side who's going, well, maybe he predicted that we would become full of ourselves, and that the recording was a lie to manipulate us into some other thing. And there's even like, should we even research psychohistory in the Foundation itself? Will that have problems with the plan? And there's like a character called the Mule, who's sort of like an individual who does mess up the plan and stuff like that. So like he plays around with this concept of psychohistory and the effects of it really good, and that's the sort of interesting meat of the show. Of the book. It's not so much a deep character study of the emotions and philosophies of the characters involved. I mean, they're all trying to figure out, what's my place in this whole grand plan, and am I doing what I'm supposed to, and that kind of stuff. But again, like it's all big picture stuff. And like what made the book so hard to film is this is a story that spans like a galaxy and a millennia. It's a multi-generational story. Like Harry Seldon and Gail Dornick, they're gone after chapter 10. Like we just have recordings of Seldon, and Gail Dornick, he dies in the book, like just of old age. And then it's a completely different generation, starting in the next chapter of, like the first 50 years after the Foundation's been established. And then we keep jumping in time forward from there. So to do that in a movie, that's difficult. But in a streaming show, well, that's easy because you can just have different cast per episode. You could do it like an anthology series.
You do it like The Crown.
Yeah, exactly. So you could just sort of have like, okay, now we're jumping 100 years into the future from this point, maybe even do a little time lapse thing. So I'm kind of baffled how they just chose the worst way of adapting that ignores all the advantages of the long form streaming format, where it's like, we have to drag out the reveal of the Foundation's purpose until the last episode.
Right.
And even then, not even have it be like a clever solution. She's like, oh, you're all here. Well, great. That means things are working. And oh, by the way, your people shouldn't be enemies because the Emperor secretly assassinated your king and queen after they got married way back in the day. And no one asks, how do you know this? Like right. they just it's like, okay, Harry Seldon's ghost said it. So, so it must be true. Yeah. Sorry, I'm jumping around a lot here, but
no, you're fine. All right, so we got to talk about. We do have to talk about Gail Dornick and Salvar Hardin, and boy, do I have things to say about that. But before we do, so we can take a proper timeout here and then shift focus. I want to talk about Grammarly. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. Download Grammarly today. Go to getgrammarly.com/W2M Network. Again, it's getgrammarly.com/W2M Network to download Grammarly for free. Okay, I got to talk immediately about Leah Harvey, who plays Salvar Hardin. Lou LaBelle as Gail Dornick, Harry's protege and self-taught young woman from a planet where the pursuit of knowledge is considered heresy.
Also not in the book. It was just the name of the planet the guy was from. Okay. It was just a mathematician hired to join like Harry Seldon's university team.
They gave her a lot to do. They eventually will give her superpowers where she has like premonitions or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, psychic abilities do show up more into the later the last Foundation book. But so they're kind of jumping the gun on that, as well as showing a bit of the second Foundation being established.
I'll just say, because you seem very excited and need and have stuff to talk about here. So
no, you can keep going. Yeah.
I got to get out this one complaint. There is an episode where she finds like a virtual version of Harry's murdered. He's stabbed by his adopted son. And then
in the book, he just dies of old age.
Yeah, and then she like jettisons him out the airlock like he's a xenomorph, if I remember correctly. And she ends up on a ship later on, and where she finds a recording of Harry, and they go through over the course of this one or two episodes this long, seemingly endless conversation where at the end of it, she's just utterly unraveled, and she's just like hitting something with it, with an axe or a bat, or I don't remember what it was, but she just completely becomes unglued. And I tell you, David, like, in a very, very general way, I liked a lot of what I saw. Like I said, some great performances, some great line deliveries, cinematography in certain places, though this is yet another future where everyone lives on a desert planet. Why no one lives in anything lush or green, why everyone has to live on dead planets in the future, I have no idea. But
there's a reason for Terminus being the way it is.
Sure. But I just... Why is Blade Runner the only future where someone's in a city? Anyway, I'm getting
because the writers are upset that the person they didn't want to vote for, won the election. Therefore, we live in a terrible hellscape, and now the future has to show that too. Even Star Trek, like the utopian future, is now everyone's depressed about how much it sucks now because everyone's racist.
Terrific. I'm guessing that's Discovery.
Discovery, Picard.
Yeah. Oh God, Picard. Can't wait to do season 2. Anyway, that is an interminable conversation, and I'm kind of 50-50 on the show. There were things I really liked about it. There are things I'm going to enjoy talking about when we get to season 2. But there are also parts of this that are interminable and exhausting, and her listening to Harry sort of reasonably explain to her a variety of different things and why he manipulated things the way that she did. And she finally just having enough of the old white man and nearing the tears, feeling the need to then go on a destructive rampage. I was like, can we be done with this character? That's a lot of this for me, is that there were interesting characters like Lee Pace and Harry, then there were utterly dull and annoying. And I hate to make this complaint because we've made it before with other stuff. It's just, there's always like a female character that's just sick of the men and just tired of it. We're tired of it.
Well, did you like the scene when the Anacreon Huntress tells the mayor of the Foundation that all their women are smarter than their men?
Yeah, sure. Terrific. This isn't agenda driven at all. Except that, like I said, like, I'm open and willing to hear some of that if it's written well. She's not written well. She's just written as like, well, she's clearly better than Harry because she's a young woman and not for any other reason. And I'm like, this is some piss poor writing.
Yeah, and the way they try to make Harry sound like a religious figure, which he's not. Like, nobody worships Harry Seldon. He's respected because he was good at his job.
Right.
But like, they understand that psychohistory is mathematics. It is a science. He's not a prophet. He's a scientist with like really good statistical analysis.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the problem is it's sort of like Robert shared that video in the group chat way back about why movies suck now because they're written by children,
right?
And there's this sort of line where it used to be your heroes were like mature, rational adults who tried to analyze the situation and come up with the best possible solution and then try it. Now everyone runs around like they're a bunch of stupid liberal arts students working out their therapy issues.
Yeah.
And like, not much offense to liberal arts students, but it's kind of like that. Like, you have these scientists being written by millennial art students who just cannot understand the thought process. Like,
right.
Like Gail Dornick, when Harry explained, the empire is falling. Quintillions of people are going to die horrible deaths for the next 30 millennia. So setting stuff up and manipulating the situation right now will shorten that from 30,000 years to 1,000 years. So this is what we're going to do. Like, our individual people right now are insignificant in the overall plan. And Gail would have gone like, I get what you're saying. I understand. These are scientists. These are intellectuals. They understand the great importance of the Foundation.
Right. And a lot of characters.
What about my feelings? I'm not feeling validated enough. But give me more attention, Dad. Give me more attention. What about what I want to do?
Yeah, there's a lot of characters reacting in this show to what's happening. Like,
stop telling me I have to go to work. Tell me how special I am.
Yeah, but my feelings are hurt. And what about me in this situation? It's like, it's a problem slightly bigger than you. No. Yeah. I'm at the center of this. Okay.
Yeah. If you think that's bad, you will really not like Star Trek Discovery.
I don't ever intend to watch it. I
Yeah.
can't.
It's
I'm all in with whatever else comes down the line, but I have missed the boat on Discovery, and I'm happy with that. But I've heard those complaints about it before. So you brought up Gail. Was there anything else about Gail that you want to talk about before we move on to?
I mean, like,
Alvar
I don't have a huge issue with the casting. I thought overall, like
fine.
Yeah, the actors are all they're doing their best. They're doing their
Mhm.
job. It's hard for me to buy these characters as the people who they say they are, because they just don't act like people like that. Gail Dornick does not act like a mathematician. Have you met a mathematician?
Yeah.
Like they're kind of strange people, but also kind of smart and socially awkward. Like you have this thing where she like counts prime numbers to calm herself for emotional coping mechanisms. It's people who don't.
I don't remember where in the sequence of time this takes place, but my favorite conversation in this entire show. I don't remember if I texted you about this or not, but I absolutely love this. They're having a conversation about. They're having like a conversation about like what knowledge to preserve or whatever, and she talking about like, okay, but like in what base system? Base 10,
yeah.
And they're like, and then one of the guys at the table, because it has to be a guy, is like, why are you getting caught up in the minutia of this argument? She was like, we're talking about deciding what knowledge to preserve, and we can't even decide on how we're going to count it.
Yeah. Whereas I'm sitting here going,
that's the kind of nerdy sci-fi stuff that I enjoy.
Yeah. Whereas I'm sitting here going, you need all of these number systems because all of your electronics, we use base 10 a lot, but base 2, like binary, that's used in all of your computers. Base 16 hexadecimal, that's used in a lot of electronics. So, anyone who has the smallest amount of knowledge about like IT, how computer systems work, knows that you need to know multiple bases of things. Like, and like I get what you're saying. It's an interesting idea, but this is kind of a Mr. Wizard moment where, if you know a bit more about how things actually work, you're like, yeah, like this wouldn't even be a discussion. They would be like, yeah, totally. We need to keep all these.
Yes, but there has to be the fat, angry white male there to yell at her, and she has to be smarter than him.
Yeah, and then there was water clock or sundial.
Okay.
It's like I don't think you guys really understand how this was supposed to work. And anyway, the actual nuts and bolts of writing the encyclopedia was not really important to the story. Like,
no,
that was all done off screen.
Right. I did enjoy that one scene. All right, let's talk about. Let's see if I get this right now. Leah Harvey as Salva Hardin, who. What was it that we just reviewed where we were laughing at everybody everybody in the future has really odd couture outfits and
Aeon Flux.
Aeon Flux, yeah. She's another one with the puffy collar. I don't understand why they like they're all using the same costume designer or literally using the same costumes, just reusing them over and over. But you have Leah Harvey who plays
Salva Hardin.
And she's supposed to be like your hero of this picture, not Lee Pace, not Jared Harris. It's her. She's on the graphic that I'm using. She's the one standing in front of the spire. She's she kicks all kinds of butt. She's your action hero. She's your everything. Not to be unfair, she's not insufferable anyway.
I mean, she does the role that has been written for her, without any problems.
Right. She does it well. I look at her costume design. I look at how they styled her hair. I look at her the way they characterized her and the things she gets to do. And I'm just curious when they were developing this, who did they think this was going to be for, and who did they think would enjoy that person as your lead action role? Like, she's the hero of this picture, even though on the cast list that I have, she's like fourth billing. But she's the one that you spend the most time with when you're not dealing with Lee Pace or Jared Harris. You're with her. And I found the stuff with her to be the most dull because I wasn't really in this to be, and I wasn't looking for a space, opera, fantasy, action fair. I was looking for nerdy, in the weed science fiction, and there's none of that with her. She's just She's just a character that looked like she belonged more in one of the Star Wars shows on Disney Plus.
Yeah, again, it's them trying to punch it up a bit. Again, in the original, Salvor Hardin was just the mayor of Terminus, like he was just a politician.
Mm-hmm.
But here now she's the warden, so she gets to carry a big gun around and shoot at monsters and get into kung fu fights with with other people, and yeah, you sort of lose out on the whole, like, this is a smart person who's trying to come up with a clever solution to an incredibly difficult problem. Like here, it's like, how do we shoot them so they can't shoot us? Again, in the book, like, they lose right off the bat. Like, the Anacreons just send an ambassador over, and he's just like, yeah, so we own you now. The Empire's abandoned you. This is all just a formality.
Anything else you wanted to bring up before? I have one last question about the show. One last beat that I wanted to deal with, because I spend the second half of the entire series dealing with it. But is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Because as far as characters go, that's really the only people worth talking about. In my opinion.
I mean, again, Salvor Hardin. Yeah, there's not a lot to her, despite her having a lot of the show. It's just she's the person that everyone looks up to do the actiony stuff.
Yeah,
and that's kind of it. And then they're trying to set up something with her psychic abilities, manifesting themselves, which, again, it's not really as interesting as the Foundation itself or the genetic dynasty. They're just sort of planting stuff for later in the show. But yeah, like, I think the problem is they're trying to write these smart people, and they just write them as very flat and emotionless. I don't know if that's just how they view the intelligent, where, again, is if you've hung around scientists or engineers, like, they are not boring people. Like, they're kind of somewhat eccentric and crazy in their own way. I mean, the boring people do exist. But yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest problem is, like, to say it very bluntly, I'm tired of having stupid people trying to write smart shows.
Yeah.
And I don't actually mean like you are, like, really stupid. It's just, you're trying to punch above your weight, and it just ends up coming off as pretentious and flat. Like, can we please stop writing monologues for the openings of episodes?
I was going to say, once again, David S. Goyer was the person responsible. Let's see, he wrote the following: Terminator Dark Fate, BVS Dawn of Justice, Man of Steel. He gets a story credit for The Dark Knight Rises. He wrote Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. He has a story credit for The Dark Knight, which everyone loves. It doesn't really make my point for me, but the rest of this does. He wrote Jumper. He wrote Batman Begins, Blade Trinity, Blade 2, Blade, Dark City. Oh, have you ever watched Dark City?
No, actually, I've heard good things about it.
It's a weird film. The Crow, City of Angels, Puppet Masters, Kickboxer 2, and Death Warrant. So boy, do you get what you pay for with him. Yeah, it's not a lot of gems in the rough there. There's a few. They're not all bad movies, but yeah. He's writing the Sandman show. Oh boy. Well, I can already see if Robert has any investment in Sandman, what the next thing he's going to scream about is. Yeah. But yeah, like the opening monologues in this, I thought were just so untied to the story. Like again, it just sounds like bunch of big words to make us sound smart. Star Trek Discovery has the same problem. Like the opening monologues are just to establish what's going on in the show so we can get to the drama. But no, they have to read Tennyson or something out loud, or Shakespeare. So the last thing I'm going to bring up, and I'm curious to see if this was in the book too. A lot of the second half of the series revolves around them, a bunch of terrorists or whatever who are trying to fight the Empire and bring down the Empire, which is already collapsing. But they need this big Death Star ship to do it, the Invictus. Which, at least the way they handled it was kind of fun. There's a preset timer, and it just jumps randomly to different places. It could jump to the other side of the universe. It could jump into a sun. It could jump into an asteroid field. It could jump anywhere. So, there's sort of an artificial tension with them on, up against a ticking clock. And so the terrorists want this ship. They need the warden to make it happen for whatever the reasons are. They need the brain trust of the Foundation. People who actually know how to make the ship go. Yeah. So is that in the book at all?
Somewhat. It was more they already had the Invictus, or at least
Mm-hmm.
an old Imperial warship. And yeah, it was, Foundation, we want you to send us some of your experts so that we can fix the ship up and use it to, establish our fiefdom in the periphery of the galaxy away from the Empire.
The
And
way they
again,
set it up, the way they set it up in the show, I thought they were going to attack the Capitol.
yeah,
Like,
that was
I thought the finale was going to be the Invictus versus, like Lee Pace and his army. Like, none of that happens. They go in a completely different direction.
Yeah. Harry Seldon just tells them what the real history was. They all believe him, and then they join hands, and forward an alliance.
Yeah,
because the world would just be so much better if everyone just got along, because we say so.
They all.
I mean, it would be nice. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
They all now worship the TikTok meme. Do you want to form an alliance?
Pretty much. Yeah. So yeah, like there was a warship, and they needed the Foundation to fix it up, but it was just like, you guys are coming and doing this anyway because we own you and could beat you up on it too. And yeah, then as I said earlier, then they sort of create the phony religion around it and use that to basically usurp control of the whole Anacreon kingdom. So the Foundation gets the fleet after that.
All right. My last word on this, and then you can have the last word. It's okay. I wanted to talk about it with you. I'm glad I watched it. I need a break from some of the other stuff we've been doing. I was curious about it, and I feel like the only way that if I'm curious about a show, the only way I ever get a chance to watch it is if someone is willing to talk about it with me, because then it forces me to watch it. I've been talking about wanting to watch The Flight Attendant for a year now, and because nobody wants to talk about that show, so I never get a chance to watch it. I'm 2 or 3 episodes into The Lost Symbol, and no one wants to talk about that either. So guess what? I haven't finished. But so it was so I'm glad that David has sort of stepped into I'll do all the science fiction shows. That's fine
for the most part.
Realm with me, and I got a chance to watch this. And after look, not every Christian said on this show once, not everything has to be a 1 or a 10. Some things can just be 5s. This is a solid 5.
Yeah, I'd say it makes me my heart bleed to give it a 5, because this is one of the great classic works of sci-fi. Like, but yeah, like we got like the perfect Dune adaptation this year. Dune fans won, but yeah, Foundation, I think we're still waiting.
Yep. All right. Anything else about this that you wanted to say? And last word.
Yeah, like it's like you say, it's not terrible, but it's not great, and I think it fails to capture what made the original work so interesting and
it's
compelling.
Very much a product of its time in terms of how television shows are developed. Like I just went back and listened to our Cowboy Bebop review, and I'm kind of hearing like there's definitely a pattern developing in a lot of these streaming shows where. And Robert said it about Cowboy Bebop, and I think it applies to this too, because it also came up in our Lock and Key review, where it's like they don't know how to write good, solid stories, so they just manufacture surface level tension, and that seems to qualify as drama.
Yeah, or like big emotional moments that don't really have that much lead up. They're just kind of there, and they just kind of beat you over the head with the force of the moment. It's cheap drama over like the big ideas, which is unfortunate. But I'd say like I treat this Foundation as this is David Goyer's Foundation. This is not Isaac Asimov's Foundation. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else going behind the scenes, like maybe just they're buried in notes and these were the changes they had to make to bring the story to fruition. Like I don't always just want to assume though the one writer is entirely at fault, but yeah, it is not a faithful adaptation of Foundation that captures the spirit of the original as someone who appreciates that book. Again, not the biggest Foundation fan, but I certainly appreciate it for what it was. Like for me, like my biggest question was actually because I was familiar with the original book. So I know just how much they dragged out things in the middle of the show. And that was just painful for me. Like I'm Millhouse sitting here, when are they going to get to the fireworks factory? Sort of thing. But for you, Mark, as someone who is not familiar with the source material, like how was it for you? Like, did it capture your interest at all, or was it just kind of boring blah or between? Or
it's kind of like if I didn't know these were based on Isaac Asimov's short stories, or books, if I didn't know anything and someone just sat me down and watched this and like, so what do you think? And I'm like, I think someone saw how successful Game of Thrones was and decided, okay, but what about space and no tits? That's Foundation.
Okay, yeah, good. Actually, I saw an article like, is Foundation the next Game of Thrones? And I'm like, now I understand everything that's wrong with Foundation, because Foundation is not Game of Thrones.
No, but everyone wishes it would be. Everyone that is, So I'll relate this story, and then I'm going right into the next plug, and then we're going into
sure
out of here. So years ago, when Die Hard came out, Die Hard was like the sleeper hit. Like it was made. I don't know if you've watched the documentary on it. The movies that made us.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, they made it. They had no idea. They had no idea that Bruce Willis would blow up and become an action star. They had no idea the thing was going to be a hit. This thing almost didn't get made. But then it's one of those movies like Star Wars or Jaws that fundamentally changes Hollywood for a while to where everything became, this is Die Hard on a boat. This is Die Hard on a plane. This is Die Hard in a mall. Everything is
Die Hard in Star Trek,
right?
Which was a really good movie.
It happened also with Speed. For a while, there was this pattern of this is speed on a boat, speed on a plane, speed on a bus, speed onto this, speed onto that. Where there are just certain movies that influence, everything now. Once they find something that resonates with the public, they have to do a million different versions of that same.
Yeah, the saying I heard is, in Hollywood, everyone's racing for second place.
Yeah.
So Harry Potter's a big hit. What can we make that's like Harry Potter?
Right, and then like every YA book that might have a little bit of magic in it gets made, because they think everything, has the possibility of being the next $1 billion YA idea. I feel like with a lot of television, like especially like this, I think people saw like the success of Game of Thrones, but we don't have Game of Thrones anymore. That's gone now, and so there's a need to sort of fill that gap with something. So it's like I can see the elevator pitch for this. Like, hey, we need to put crap on our streaming service so people will buy it. Okay, well, what do you got? Well, how about Game of Thrones, but it's space? Oh, okay. Does anyone like get naked, sleep with their siblings, or throw a child out a window? No, it's a lot of math. We'll take the math out. and give me some more drama. And let's get a female, ass kicking action star in there, and we're sold. And David Goyer was like, "Can I have Batman punching Superman with a sink?" And like,
yeah. Can we make Foundation with blackjack and hookers? In fact, forget the blackjack and the Foundation.
There you go. All right. So with that, I mean, now we're in it now, so we got to do season 2 whenever that comes out. And apparently, and I was just reading about this while you were talking, David Goyer said that hopefully over the course of 80 episodes, 80 hours, as opposed to trying to condense it into all 2 or 3 hours for a single film. Goyer said that this format might not succeed, but if it did, it would be unique. So they're like planning for 8 seasons of this, roughly.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Given how they did the first season, I think like they are not maximizing how the format for this story.
Yeah, I will see what Apple does. Like, I don't know. Netflix cancels stuff for some really bizarre reasons. It really catches people off guard. So I'll be curious to see if this one ends up getting. It's been renewed for a second season. Let's see if it gets to 8 or not. Might be the longest thing we've ever reviewed. Apple
has the money to fund it if they want to, even if it's not popular. I have no idea what the numbers are on it at all, but.
All right. Well, with that said, that is our review of Foundation. Before we go, I just want to remind everybody, I wish the music could have been better in this. As a matter of fact, if you're looking for some good music, we're giving away a free 30-day trial of the Amazon Music Unlimited service. The link is getamazonmusic.com/W2M network. Over 70 million songs for you to stream for free for a month. If you choose, if you click the link, we certainly encourage you to do so. We use it all the time on the Metal Hammer of Doom. It's great. We stand by it. And now, and if you don't trust me, you should at least give it a shot. Try it for free. If you don't like it, you can cancel it. If you do, you keep it. You pay the monthly fee like you would do Spotify or Apple Music. Again, that's getamazonmusic.com/W2M network. Alrighty, Dave. A week and a day from now. Hang on, that's March. A week and a day from now, January 7th, you and I will be talking the finale season of Lost in Space.
Hooray!
Yay! And then allegedly you'll be on. I hope you are, because if not you, then I don't think anybody else is going to be on this show, and then I won't be doing it. You'll be on for Cobra Kai season 4 on January 10th. And then I think you said you wanted to be on the Witcher show. Yeah, I put you in there. So then January 13th, you're on for The Witcher. And then January 31st, you're on for Agresco season 4. So lots of David. This was the month of David here in January.
A lot of stuff in my wheelhouse came up. It's
all freaking at once.
It's going to be interesting getting through all that.
Yeah, welcome to my life. In the meantime, myself and Alexis Hannah finally got our Animaniacs Looney Tunes show done today, so that's now in the archives.
Woohoo!
Tomorrow we're re-airing our Cobra Kai season 2 review. On Saturday, January 1st, 2022, we've got my kids and I re-airing our Tom and Jerry the movie commentary, and then myself and Jesse, we're re-airing the Weird Al Yankovic career retrospective. We're kicking off the year with some new content. We've got Billionaire Island by Mark Russell, You season 3, another Spider-Man roundtable, Sean Comer trying to get in 24 podcasts in a year, starting off with a triple feature for Titan, El Camino, and Christine. Vroom is the theme there. The Podsman will be doing a review of WWE Day 1, assuming everyone doesn't have COVID in that company. And in the evening, myself and Robert Winfrey will be doing a Damn You Hollywood for Don't Look Up and Being the Ricardos, I actually just watched before we went live tonight. January 5th, we're reviewing Bandmade, Unseen World, which came out almost a year ago and seems to be getting some traction online. Thursday night, myself, Evan Bevins, and Ronnie Adams will be reviewing Prisoners of Ghostland, Shadows in the Cloud, and Out of Death. While we're waiting for all that to happen, check out our reviews of The Matrix Resurrections, all 2.5 hours of it. The Kingsman, much less than that. The Hateful Eight, and David and I reviewing Ghost in the Shell, Aeon Flux, and Ex Machina. All right, Dave, thanks for coming on again. I always enjoy talking to you, and then we'll be talking a lot over the course of January.
Yeah.
Any shout outs you want to give before we go?
No, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Just wishing everyone a happy new year and a safe holiday season. And yeah, we'll talk to you after that.
Yep. All right, everyone, be well, be safe, and behave.